I'm joined today by 4 of our therapists here at SunCloud. We wanted to try something a little bit different in light of everything that we're all dealing with these days and the way in which SunCloud's delivering much of our treatment through the internet and over the phone. We just wanted to bring everybody, or not everybody, but bring a few of our team members together and just have a conversation and share a little bit more about how things are going, how telehealth is working at SunCloud, what some of the things we're seeing with our patients, really to help people who may be considering whether or not to come to treatment at SunCloud right now, or even just to come to treatment at all, anywhere, how this is all going. So with that, I kind of want to just turn it over and hear from you guys.
Well, I think, initially, as I think I mentioned the other day when we were talking, it was a very difficult transition because most of the time we're accustomed to sitting across from somebody face to face and really getting a full sense of what's going on with them and seeing their whole body. And, because a lot of the information that we gather as therapists comes from the body. And so it's been an adjustment going to telehealth for that reason, and also because a lot of our patients have experienced very intense trauma. Most of them have been diagnosed with PTSD. And the transition from being in therapy live in person to telehealth really started to stir up a lot of feelings of abandonment and neglect. And it's taken a little while to adjust to where we are now, which is we're in a good place now. I think, the sessions that we're having with patients, they're able to engage more. They're able to really connect with each other a little bit more. In the beginning, it was more, we were prompting them a little bit more, almost as if it were individual therapy in a group. But now they're starting to talk to each other and really engage with each other. And as I mentioned the other day to you, David, oftentimes it feels like we're actually in the room with them together. So it's not ideal, and I don't think it's the way, it's the place we want to stay in terms of therapy, but for right now, it's the best that we have, and it's okay. It's okay.
I agree with what Shale, what you were saying, with it being difficult to not be with them and see their bodies. I do think because of the connection that our patients have with each other, it's made the transition much more smooth than we anticipated. A lot of our patients are having extremely beneficial groups and are having a lot of realizations in the groups that the same way that they would if they were in person. I think the coming together in the sense of unity that, everyone's going through this pandemic together, and we're still able to provide them care is giving a sense of safety to our patients, and they're actually relying more on each other than I think they even did when they were in person, because they know they need more accountability. So we haven't had issues with our patients not participating in groups. We have gotten a lot of positive feedback, which I'm really grateful for. There was one time where I got kicked off of the group because I was having issues with Zoom, and I had another staff member get on and apologize for them, and they said, "Oh, we were fine. We just continued to process." And it was like, part of me was like, well, dang, you guys didn't need me, but it was actually, it's cool. It just speaks to the group dynamic. Yeah.
We actually, some of our group members have started a weekly Zoom meetup that they're doing on their own also. So it's like they're here all week and having groups together all week, and then they're scheduling their own sessions on the weekend just to stay in continued contact, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I realized like I was agreeing with Shale too with the like so much of being a therapist is picking up on the nonverbals, and it's asked me to like hone in on a whole different set of skills because it's like what I have noticed is like you have them, each of their squares is in your face. So I have like full nonverbals and up close versus like if I'm sitting in a circle trying to keep like vision on everybody. And I noticed I can tell a lot by how they're sitting, how they're laying in bed. Before it was just like, I can tell that something's coming up for them because their swivel chair is moving. And now I'm watching them fully lay down. Their eyes aren't even open if they're pissed at something, like, or someone's like extra giving cuddles to their pets. And I know that something's coming up for that person. Like, it's like a whole new set of skills, I feel, just by even how they're showing up in their personal space. Yeah.
That's the other interesting thing is that we are getting a very different experience of our patients than we would normally get, in that we are getting a window into their homes. And you know, what room they choose to be in for therapy, whether the door is closed, you know, whether the patient is getting up and wandering around, whether the patient has the video on but then they disappear for a while. There's a lot of ways that people leave group in person, and there's a lot of ways that people leave group via telehealth. And it is, like Emily said, it is an entirely new way of recognizing how people are having trauma responses, that turning off your video is a flight response. And learning how to draw people back into the room just by turning on their video has been tricky at times, but also very revealing in terms of, like I said, where they're doing the therapy from and what the room reveals to us from a just from a diagnostic perspective. So that's been pretty interesting.
I was really impressed by how quickly SunCloud rallied. Like, I have a few other friends at different agencies, and they're still scrambling to figure out like a way to make like the therapy and process groups work. But I feel like the second the quarantine happened, it was less than 72 hours before SunCloud was ironing out Zoom and how we can still have these services for people that need them. And that's like, I want that to be acknowledged. I know,
and I
a
feel
lot
like
of
the patient's transparency was like, from us to them, was so important, because there were so many changes happening suddenly, and they didn't know what was going on, and we didn't know. We were figuring it out day by day. So our model of transparency, I think, is really important to practice during this time, and it's shown that it's really paid off with patients. Just being able to kind of go with the flow and the unknown.
Yeah, I think most of the first like couple groups were just like, this is weird. We don't know really what's happening. It's weird for you guys. It's weird for us. And we're all just going to kind of piecemeal through it together.
Yeah.
What would you guys say to somebody who has, you know, knows SunCloud as being a place of connection and, you know, with a treatment model that's relatively sophisticated, integrative, kind of high touch, and they're looking at us and they're saying, how the heck are these guys gonna help me, you know, while I have to stay at home?
Yeah, we have that. There was someone that I did an intake. Maybe it was my first session with her, and she was very skeptical. Some of the people come from residential, some of our patients, so they're coming from being with people 24/7 to recently stepping down, and it's a drastic change to go from being in person to seeing your therapist on Zoom and having all these Zoom groups. So there's no way to really I think provide them the comfort that they want until they step into the virtual group and see the connection that's experience the connection that's happening with the patients that are already familiar with it. I think staff members can't comfort patients the way that they can comfort each other. So as much as I want to say as the therapist, you know, just try to stay open, you know, because it's hard to explain how it can possibly be beneficial. Even to other therapists, it's hard for me to explain. But I think that's kind of the way of SunCloud, is that it's one of those things that you just have to experience. And I just feel like the spiritual principles that we kind of abide by and live out are happening through our telehealth, and the patients are picking up on that. It's really powerful.
I think in large part what makes it work for us is that so many of the clinicians at SunCloud are also seeking recovery through Zoom sessions, you know, outside of work. And so it's like, you know, one of the things I've always appreciated about SunCloud is that very rarely do we ask a patient to do something that we're not willing to do ourselves. And so we're not just suggesting they like do these things online virtually, we're doing them also.
Yeah, I tried to make it pretty speakable at first, just like my transition and like my set meetings in my own recovery, like how I had to immediately, now all of a sudden I have like Zoom codes for my whole life. Like, but like to name like the discomfort I was feeling, but like how necessary it is, like in order for me to be there for you guys, I have to be pursuing my own recovery and my own codes and my own transition into virtual recovery. And it's also like, because especially the anonymous community coming together so quickly as well, like it was like within the first week of quarantine, the first week of like citywide cancellation of in-person meetings, there was already a Google Doc that I could like hand out to clients saying like, here are all the different meetings in the city that are happening virtually, and we're here with you. So it's just like something about recovery. Not only are like people in recovery employed at SunCloud, but like because of that, we're able to extend how quickly people in recovery rally during a time of like chaos, pandemic. Like we're survivors. I love it. Part of a really awesome club.
Hannah, I think the point that you made about you know, people coming in for an assessment, coming in, you know, that it's really not that different from an assessment that we would do for somebody who actually is coming in that there's no way to describe what happens at SunCloud, because it is such a different experience than I've seen at any other treatment center, that people come here for a lot of different reasons. My experience has been that most of the time they're coming here to answer two questions: what's wrong with me and who am I? You know, and those questions can only be answered experientially. They can't really be answered by, well, let me show you what the schedule's like, or let me tell you how long the day is, or let me tell you who the therapists are, or, you know, any of those answers, because it isn't really, there's nothing that can really do it justice other than just experience it for yourself. And so in that way, it's identical to what a patient would experience if they were going to be doing therapy live. There's really no difference.
You know, guys, our models is a bit of a hybrid model. You know, we haven't gone all virtual, and obviously we're not doing all in person. That I think may differentiate us a little bit. So a little bit on like why it's a hybrid model, why, you know, when we're asking people to come in, when they do come in, how do we do it? How we're not forcing people to come in, and we're also trying to be sensitive to when somebody might need to come in for a session or a UTOX or something like that.
So one of the things that I think has been really helpful for patients is that we can meet with them in person. when we feel it's appropriate and beneficial for them. So some of our patients are struggling with eating disorder symptoms, or are having very strong cravings to use drugs or alcohol. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to get detoxes and, check weights and vitals and provide them the support that one might need in person when you're struggling with these kind of life-threatening illnesses. So we are constantly evaluating as a team. We meet every week virtually and talk multiple times about who is struggling more to the point where they might need to see a staff member in person. And it's been a conversation that we invite patients to have too. So we ask them, like, what do you guys feel you need too? So it's very collaborative. And I think that that's separated us from other places, other treatment centers that are either all virtual or all face-to-face. So we are hybrid, and it seems to be working really well. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think you made a really good point, Hannah, in that we deal with life-threatening illnesses every day of the week, and things are a little bit, different now with coronavirus, but we're always dealing with life-threatening illnesses, and so sometimes, if the acuity is higher, we need to see someone face-to-face to manage it as much as we can. And of course, our threshold may be a little bit lower for seeking or referring someone to a higher level of care if we can't see them, continually face to face. But dealing with life-threatening illnesses is not something new for us. This is what we do every day, and we have to sort of adjust accordingly. Yeah, there's an orientation process that they get coming on, and understanding Zoom a little bit, and getting the links and an explanation of what we're doing and the expectations and everything. I think Gail does a lot of that for us here, orienting them to the system before the first day of group even.
I think because I've been doing a number of assessments, either over the phone or Zoom. The process has been, it's much more difficult to assess somebody over the phone than it is to see them live in person. And so there's, as Hannah sort of mentioned earlier, there's a much sort of lower threshold in terms of, determining somebody's level of acuity. But for the person who is appropriate, once we determine that they are appropriate for whether it's PHP or IOP, it moves pretty quickly. And the communication that happens between the staff and the patients has become a well-oiled machine. And so the patients, I think, feel like they're very well taken care of, and they get very explicit instructions about, how to log on, and do I need to get labs? Do I need to get an EKG? Is that even possible? And we've found that we have been able to get those things done. And I'm guessing that most people would think that you wouldn't be able to get those things done right now, but you actually can, and it can be done pretty quickly.
But I think that, I don't know if it was Emily, you just brought it up, that a lot of the patients are in the homes of, where trauma has taken place. They're forced to spend more time with people who are involved and have contributed to developmental trauma, complex PTSD, and
key enablers.
What'd you say?
Oh, and key enablers.
Yeah. And I think that brings about a whole nother layer of just difficulty and challenges for us as a team to help provide them the support they need. So I think, part of what I do and what the team does is just continue to validate and, express that, we wish we could change it. Part of it's accepting our own powerlessness. I'm powerless over this whole pandemic, and, I I wish that some of the patients that I work with didn't have to be in the circumstances that they are right now. So I think it's okay to speak to that and just be transparent with them and create a space where they can talk about how they don't feel safe or supported. You know, some of their parents or loved ones might be in another room. Those same people could be, you know, perpetrators or just causes of a lot of anxiety and pain. So sometimes they feel they have to whisper, or I think it's important to just know that they can still participate in the group. Like, it's challenging and it can still be done, and it's providing them more relief. So
I think that speaks to, like, you know, the difference between physical isolation and spiritual and social connection, right? I mean, we're physically isolating from one another, but we're still connecting, and our patients are still connecting through programming and outside of programming.
mm-hmm.
I think you know, what's so profound about, you know, because I've seen patients who are you know, their parents may be arguing right outside the door while they're in group, and helping them to find a safe place inside themselves that they can go to in the midst of this chaos has been really transformative for I would say several people I've seen that happen with. That there can be a lot of chaos happening right outside their door, like you said, Hannah, but in the group they're able to find a place inside themselves that that is safe. And if we can teach them how to do that, then they can go anywhere.
Yeah, it really can.
Which is really, like you said, David, you know, it's a disease of isolation, right? And but if somebody can find an inner freedom, they can instead of being dragged around by trauma brain, they can actually go through life making choices and live from their heart the way that they have always wanted to and haven't been able to because they've been trapped.
You guys think we'll stick with telehealth forever? You know, of course, we're going to stay with it until it's safe and clear to do programming again. Is this something you guys enjoy? Something you'd want to do again?
I think it's a really great tool.
Cool.
You know, thank God we have it, you know, because if it were 30 years ago, where would these people go?
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I can't emphasize enough, like, we did this quickly. Like, it was like on Friday having a conversation with the patient about, hey, we don't know if this building is even going to be open to you guys, to here's a code you can call groups as usual. And I don't know any other places that were able to do that without there being some sort of lag period where people went programless. So, like, I'm proud.
Yeah. I really appreciate having just working, you know, remotely or being in the office and not having the same amount of patients and staff. I just appreciate working together, like how things were. I appreciate being able to walk out of my office and see a room full of patients laughing or crying or whatever it is. Just having staffings in person. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that we have that SunCloud's still here. So many other places were shutting down. I'm grateful to our owners, David and Kim, for working so hard to keep us afloat, just tirelessly, constantly having to keep up with all the updates, and that can't be easy. So I think the gratitude goes down from staff to patients, and we just have to stay with that. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Great.